than the principles of liberty, and they go coasting and thinking wealth is the important issue and redistribution of wealth is what we should be involved with. So they concentrate on special interest redistribution of wealth, and this makes the country poorer. But at the same time as the wealth is dwindling, which it has been for quite a long time, especially in the last 12 years, it's been going down. But as the wealth goes down, nobody wants to lower their standards of living. So what do we do as individuals and business and governments? They resort to borrowing money. Debt is the nemesis, and therefore it looks like, nobody thinks they've been really suffering for a long time, but on the margin, a lot of people have been. The standard of living has been going down for 12 years, but, even on the surface, we can look out, and most people are still doing rather well, and we hide from the fact that probably more than 20% are unemployed, but it's all on debt and borrowing, and if we wanted to clean the slate, what would we have to do to pay this debt off? We owe it to foreigners. We owe it to so many other people. So this is the reason that we are in the midst of this crisis. That anybody, if you as an individual live beyond your means, there's a limitation to it. And if you're an honorable citizen and the bank won't loan you any money, and you're not on the verge of declaring bankruptcy, what do you have to do? You have to slash spending, you have to work harder and pay down your debt and lower your standard of living. But politicians and governments and people on the dole, they don't want to hear any of that. And, it continues on and on. Now, it is true that when things get out of kilter, I happen to have a personal belief that bankruptcy is something that either absolutely should be avoided or in a very minimal way. But economically speaking, and nationally, we have national bankruptcy laws since the beginning of our country, that when things get out of kilter, the most important thing we should do is have the liquidation of debt and go through the bankruptcy. In the Old Testament, it had something to do with the Jubilee. You get a new start. So the market wants to correct things. The market wants to say, enough is enough. You've spent too much. The debt is too high. You're living on borrowed money. It is now time you have to live beneath your means. But governments don't want it, so the government wants to paper it over, and they say, you don't have to do it. We've done it before. We get into a little correction, which is the market demanding get things back into balance. No, what we need to do is pump harder, pump the money supply, pump the spending, and reinflate the bubbles. And they've been able to get away with that for a long time. But what we're facing today as a nation and as a party and in our philosophy is that has come to an end. There will be no more temporary recoveries like we've had, periodically every 5 to 10 years you have a pretty serious recession. This is not just a recession. This is a major event for us, and not just for us, it's a major event for the world. Because what was established in 1971 was a total fiat currency where we were able to inherit the privilege of printing the gold, or printing the money that other countries were going to treat like gold and put it in reserve currency, which permitted us endless borrowing power. And we still are borrowing. People still trust us. We have a military might. That conveys confidence to our political system and to our money. But that is going to come an end. It is absolutely impossible to endlessly spend, endlessly have deficits, and endlessly print money. And because this system is worldwide, it's a worldwide event. Your security can't be achieved no matter how a few people are capable of trading currencies and going from dollar to yen to euros and whatnot. But that is not going to be the solution because everybody depends on the dollar. Now, what happens when a government does that? How does the default occur? People receiving a check from government, whether they're getting food stamps or Social Security or veterans benefit, those checks will always come. And the government can't do that because all they have to do is print the money. But you know what they can't do is they can't convey value to that, and that's how the debt will be liquidated, and that is what's happening right now. It's already started. The prices are rising. It's going a lot worse than the 1970s, and we will be under the gun to reassess this and change it. As an initial thing that we must do in order to correct this is a simple little matter. Just get rid of the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah!
And while we're doing that, we might as well repeal all of 1913. We'll get rid of that. The income tax facilitates big government. The Federal Reserve facilitates big government because that is a delayed tax. Governments, just think of what Washington couldn't do if they didn't rely on the Fed to print the money to buy the Treasury bills. They would have to stop because interest rates would go up and people wouldn't keep borrowing the money. And so the Fed is a culprit in this. So, but it is still a symptom of a problem that we have and allowed to develop over these many, many decades, that we have lost our way in many manners. That we have come to the assumption that is different than the founders about what the role of government ought to be. You know, to me, in a free society, and the founders believe that it's in our Constitution, the role of government is not complex. The role, at least of the federal government, and the purpose of the government is for the preservation of our liberty. But we don't concentrate on that. We have become materialistic, and we think about only the material benefits that come as a consequence. But what else we have done is we have assumed that the role of government is different than that. It's different than what the Constitution allows us. We as a people have accepted the idea that the role of government in foreign policy is to police the world and take care of everybody. And be involved. If you aren't doing well with 2 wars, start a 3rd one, maybe. The role of our government is to preserve our national security and our national defense, and that does not mean nation building and getting involved in civil wars and meddling in the affairs of other nations.
Yeah!
Idea, and it's a constitutional idea, and it goes along with what the founder said. Think about it in terms of what we have to deal with on the budget. I mean, that should be the easiest place to cut. Instead, we keep adding on there. It's like a sacred part of our budget. But we could just bring our troops home. You know, when I was in high school is when they were redrafting again. I remember World War II, and during Korea War, they drafted one of my teachers who didn't come home. And we still have troops over in Korea. South Korea should be on their own legs by now. And Japan doesn't need us. They resent us being there. Why should we subsidize Germany by providing their national defense? They, matter of fact, like it for economic reasons to keep us there. And the wars in the Middle East aren't serving our well-being. This would be an opportunity. We spend over $1 trillion a year maintaining our empire. We're in 170 countries. We have over 700 bases. And they say that we're there for humanitarian reasons. We're not bombing in Libya for humanitarian reasons. That is a mess over there, and it's going to be out of control, and it's even more out of control under our commander-in-chief right now, because he doesn't know exactly why he went in, and he doesn't know exactly what he's going to do, and he doesn't know exactly when he's going to go home.
Yeah!
We have to have a clear understanding what the role of government ought to be, and national defense is an important role for the federal government. But also, there's nothing in our Constitution that says that we should have a welfare redistribution state. It wasn't meant to be, but all of a sudden people will challenge you and they'll say, oh, you conservative libertarians, constitutionalists, you just don't care about poor people. Well, why is it if you accept this notion that the government would intervene and make sure every poor person has a house, we end up with a massive recession where we bail out the banks and the mortgage companies and everybody else, and the people that we were going to give power